Today, we're stepping into the incredible, obsessive, and just brilliant world of Yayoi Kusama, the real woman behind all those iconic dots. I mean, chances are you've seen this before, right? It's that endless, dazzling field of lights and patterns that has absolutely taken over social media for years. It's mesmerizing, it's totally immersive, and it feels like it's everywhere. But who is the person who created all of this? Well, this is her, Yayoi Kusama, an artist whose own look, let's be honest, is just as famous as her art. And to really understand her work, you have to start with a question that basically defines her entire life. What happens when the worst thing in your life, your greatest pain, actually becomes your greatest gift? So first, let's just establish who she is right now. In today's art world, she really only has one title that matters. She is the undisputed queen of polka dots. And seriously, that is not an exaggeration. If you look at sales, if you look at cultural impact, Yayoi Kusama is the most successful living artist on the planet. Her shows pull in these massive, record-breaking crowds. But to get how she reached this level of fame, we have to go back to where it all started. See, her unique vision wasn't something she cooked up in a studio. It was born inside her own mind. We have to go back to the very beginning, to a childhood that was shaped by some pretty terrifying hallucinations. Her childhood back in Matsumoto, Japan, was just deeply traumatic. Her mother was physically abusive and would even destroy her drawings. Her father was a serial cheater, and get this, her mother would force little Kusama to spy on him. It's no surprise this gave her a lifelong fear and just total revulsion for anything to do with sex. So around the age of 10, all that trauma started to bubble up as these really vivid hallucinations. In her own words, she described looking at something as simple as the flower pattern on a tablecloth, and suddenly it would come alive, expanding and expanding until she felt like she was literally disappearing, being reduced to nothingness. And this experience led to the absolute core idea of her life's work, self-obliteration. It was a pretty radical way to survive. Instead of fighting these visions, she decided to join them, to become one with them. By endlessly repeating the patterns in her art, she found a way to control them, to dissolve her own anxious self into this infinite pattern. Now, to turn this coping mechanism into an actual career, she knew she had to get out of her repressive home. And that ambition pointed her to one place, the heart of the avant-garde art world, New York City. So she lands there in 1957. She's trading this super rigid traditional society, one she called too small and too scornful of women, for the wild, chaotic promise of New York. She was hoping for creative freedom. But she ran smack into a different kind of wall. She was a true innovator, but as a Japanese woman in an art scene totally dominated by men, her ideas kept getting copied, and the men who copied her got all the credit. For example, she pioneered soft sculptures, and then shortly after, Claes Oldenburg became famous for his. She created these immersive photo installations, and then Andy Warhol did something incredibly similar and got massive praise for it. And the result was just devastating. I mean, can you imagine? She's working around the clock, pushing boundaries, but getting zero recognition, zero money. The strain was just too much. It led to her being hospitalized for overwork. And in that dark place of despair, she tried to take her own life. This absolute rock-bottom moment was a turning point. It forced her to leave New York and make a really radical choice. She wasn't looking for fame anymore. She was looking for a sanctuary. After her closest companion, Joseph Cornell, died, she went back to Japan in 1973. But the art world there was even less welcoming than New York had been. Her mental health kept getting worse until 1977, when she made a decision that would change her life forever. She voluntarily checked herself into a psychiatric hospital. And that's where she has lived, by her own choice, ever since. You see, the hospital wasn't an endpoint. It was her safe haven. It gave her the stability and the peace she needed to just focus on her work. Her art studio is literally right across the street. Kusama herself said it best and most bluntly. "If it were not for art, I would have killed myself a long time ago." For her, art was never just a career or a hobby. It has always, always been about survival. And from this quiet, stable home base in Tokyo, something pretty remarkable started to happen. The world that she had left behind, well, it finally came looking for her. For years, she was basically a footnote in the international art world. But then, a huge show in New York in 1989 completely reignited interest in her work. It kicked off one of the greatest comebacks in art history. And then, when the 21st century and social media came along, she went from being a respected artist to a full-blown global phenomenon. Her infinity mirror rooms were just perfect for the age of the selfie. They introduced her vision to a whole new generation. The scale of this thing is just staggering. A single exhibition of her work generated 330 million impressions on social media for its hashtag. Think about that. Her vision, which was born from her most private trauma, had become a public, global experience. Which brings us right back to the beginning, to the real meaning behind all the dots and pumpkins and those infinite spaces. So what's it all about? Every single polka dot, every repeating pumpkin, is her tool for managing those intrusive thoughts from her childhood. When she creates these infinite worlds, she's doing more than just making pretty art. She's inviting us to come join her in that process, to lose ourselves, just for a moment, in her very personal act of self-obliteration. Her art began as a way for her to escape her own mind. And that leaves us with one final thought. When we line up for hours to step inside one of her creations, what are we trying to escape?